Welcome, everyone. We're going to be focusing on writing engaging outreach messages to engineers specifically. For some kind of context, the idea came about as a result of some data that we pulled recently from a sample of outreach messages on Cord. It brought about the question about how can we be writing better messages. We actually found 84% of messages sent to engineers had no personalization in them. Those that did actually had a 13% higher chance of being accepted. We also found message length played a factor as well, with messages between 300 to 600 characters having a much higher chance of being accepted. Obviously, this was very quantitative data. There's so much more that goes into an outreach message. And so we really wanted to investigate this further. What better way of doing this than kind of discussing it with, very much an expert sender and also someone who receives a lot of messages. Dale, I'm going to sort of start with you. In your opinion, is the effectiveness of a good outreach message sometimes undervalued in recruitment?
Yeah, I think so. I think 100%. I think the thing that people don't get and that is massively undervalued is the impact that a reach out message has on kind of framing the entire conversation. People focus on contacting as many people as possible. And actually, if that's really low quality, if the stuff that you're sending out is poor, what happens is you might start a lot of great conversations because people know that you work for a great company, they know that the role is going to be interesting, but they come into that first conversation feeling like you kind of already don't know what you're talking about, and it's a really bad way to start, right? And the alternative is that you can put some really great stuff together. If you go above and beyond, if you do really deep levels of personalization, if you send people tons of content, and if you speak to them in a way that resonates with people, I think it frames that first conversation with the recruiter in a good way, right? Like people come into that, they're a little bit more excited about hearing about the role. And then when you kick that off in a positive way, it means that the whole rest of the process, there's just a little bit more trust there.
It seems like one thing that's really obvious is how effective tailored messages are. Dale, how do you go about ensuring your outreach message comes across as sincere but also tailored?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. And I also think it feeds into another problem, which is over personalization. And I think Ivor would agree with me here is that, while it's great, people want to be seen, they want people to understand what they do, they don't necessarily want you to know everything about them as an individual, right? Some reach out messages that you'll get will be like, hey, I've seen you've worked on this tiny little project on GitHub that we know all about. And it's a bit weird. It's like not how you start a conversation with anyone in the real world. The way I structure it is that, kind of core nuts and bolts of any reach out messages is more or less going to be the same, right? So you're always going to introduce yourself. You're always going to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what the company is all about. You're always going to give the brief on the role and kind of the brief that you're looking for in terms of the actual candidate that you're after. And that's probably not going to change, right? So those components of your reach out are going to stay the same every time. The bit that changes is why you, right? Why have we reached out to you out of the millions of people on LinkedIn or whatever channel that you're using? Why have we taken the time to write you a message? It's usually going to be things like, we see the trajectory that you're on. We see that you're pushing into a lead role. It looks like you've started maybe picking up a couple of reports. We feel that this role could give you the opportunity to perhaps run a bigger team or something like that. And then as you go through and as you start messaging more and more people about the same job, what's going to happen is that you're going to identify personas that kind of fit that bill. It's just about understanding the profile of the person that you're talking to.
If they took the time to read through what my LinkedIn has, then that has a massive impact. It's like, oh, you have been working with AWS for a year or so. We have jobs that are suitable for that. Not, you owned a shop like 20 years ago. You'd be good as a shop manager now type thing. So it's having some the recruiter, whoever it is, basically is just to have a glance at what I've done before and how it's basically tailored towards the job. Like, you're not going to say, we have a DevOps job going, it's Azure, but you've done AWS. So they're all the same. It's not going to be like that.
I think one of the things that I see a lot with messages that are sent on Cord and even previously, in my time in recruitment, is when you're messaging an engineer for a specific position, often, people will only list the tech stack alone, and I guess expect that to kind of excite you. With kind of the popularity of languages constantly shifting, is tech stack alone enough to get you excited about a role, or do you need a bit extra?
With tech, it's ever shifting. As a tech person, as an engineer, it's always important to just keep rolling with the time, keep rolling with the technology. So for me personally, from any job perspective, they'd say we want to work on, improving this, and that appeals to me a hell of a lot more. Another thing that appeals to me would be tell me about the culture of the company. It's, don't just say we are working on this, our mission is this. So what? It's, we are a challenger bank. This is your tech stack. That doesn't really appeal to me. It's like we are working on the next mission critical thing to help, refugees or something like that. That's got an impactful message around it. Meat of it is, why should I come work for you? What is the message you're wanting to send? And what impact will I have if I join there? What will I be doing to help you guys further the mission? So that appeals to me a hell of a lot more.
Dale, what would you say, like, how much information is too much information? We found that kind of 600 characters was the sweet spot on Chord, which kind of looks like 3 short paragraphs. How much is too much, and what should the balance be between, like, company specific information and position specific information?
I think the reason shorter messages are successful isn't because all of the content that the candidate needs is captured in the 300-word message. I think it's because the people who are doing those kind of messages are providing enough contextual information elsewhere for someone to make their mind up, right? So if you're saying, hey, we're Harbour, check our website out here, this is what our culture's like, check that out here, have a look at our demo here, you can fit that in to like 100 characters or 100 words or whatever. And people have got tons and tons of information. So I think a quick snippet, hey, great to meet you, this is what we're doing, check us out here, and here. And then the rest of the message is talking about, hey, this is why we want to talk to you as an individual.
In terms of like company tone, like what generally works, or does it vary from kind of company to company, or in your experience, like how are you kind of like framing that initial message?
I think like the barometer is, if you talked in this tone to your friends down the pub or wherever, are they going to think you're weird? If you're just like, if you come across just really abrupt and business-like, it just reads like really disjointed. I think it's kind of really drummed into people that they need to be super, super, super professional, and sometimes that's at the expense of being personable. So I think you should just talk to people like you talk to your friends in the pub or wherever else. So I think that's one component of it, but it's not it. I think the other things that are much more important than that, especially in the context of a startup, is just being compassionate and like encouraging. I think as recruiters, we should be a promoter for everyone that we speak to. And then the other thing, we've talked about this already, but just being like interested and curious in what people are doing. Everyone in the world loves to talk about what they do. Like, there's very few people out there who don't enjoy chatting about kind of what they're interested in, their passions, and all those kind of things. And I think if you're, in the reach out, definitely, but also it goes beyond that into your further conversations. If you spark up a recruiter screen or whatever with an engineer, and then you immediately flick to logistical information, how much salary, when can you start, and all those kind of things, it misses the point completely. Like, we need to be finding out what makes people tick, and then that actually allows us to make more informed hiring decisions as well.
How about you, Ivor? How does kind of how important is the tone of the message versus kind of I guess, like, if you received 2 messages, one was super formal, the other one was a bit more relaxed, both seem quite interesting, like, does it make a difference for you?
I've had one message before which was I wouldn't go saying weird, it just felt like it's not the right format in a way. It's basically like, hi, whatever, and lovely weather we're having in it. Yeah, anyway, let's talk about jobs. I was like, what? What are you doing? But I think if they took the time to tailor it properly, it does feel like, this person is really, really interested in me. It's just, it adds to a much better experience onboarding as well as recruiting.
Really getting to know the person seems to be the real common theme here, which almost sounds so simple, but clearly is so overlooked. Ivor, is there anything that you haven't seen in an outreach message that you think could make them more engaging?
Once again, it goes back really to the culture of the company. A lot of
Yeah.
it is very much so we are doing this, we're doing that, tech stack and so on. There's not an awful lot of mention about what the culture is like. What is it, is it a fun place to work in, and why is it a fun place to work in? When I was applying, that was pretty much number one concern for me. Was the new place that I'm going to have a similar culture to the last place I'd had? From some
Yeah.
recruiters I have heard before, it's like, oh yeah, it's a nice place to work for. It's a very friendly bunch. It's like, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
It is so important. I think one thing that really helps inform that conversation is having a warts and all kind of approach, right? I think everyone knows, every engineer that's even semi-credible knows that every company has its flaws, right? So when you're talking about culture, if you're like, yeah, it's the best place to work in the whole world, you should, sometimes the message just doesn't resonate at all.
Number one for me in any job that I go for is, am I going to be happy in this job? Doesn't matter about the salary. It matters more, am I going to be happy? And are the people there going to support me? That matters a hell of a lot more to me than, we're going to pay you $1 billion or whatever, and then just, you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. So really sell that culture. I personally think it's the biggest take home for me if I was going to go for a new job right now. It's just, is the culture amazing? How is it amazing? Sell that to me first, then we'll have a conversation about negotiating salaries and so on.